Welcome, everybody, and welcome to now the fifth episode of Mental Check. Person I have on today is one of my dear friends, someone who I've grown up with in McKinney middle school days. This guy used to play offensive lineman, believe it or not, and just one of my closest friends, unless Toby Oleru.
Oh
Toby.
man, good to see you, dude.
Good to see you too.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Every time we come in, I try to get together at least
Yeah.
once. So this is our time, and it's perfect just to not only talk to each other, but just to have these authentic conversations.
Yeah.
So, Toby, I know you,
Mhm.
but for the people who don't know you, can you just kind of go through your upbringing? So,
Yeah.
like from when you were young, Toby, baby.
No, come on now, Tobechi is out there.
Until now, kind of what made you who you are today, just from the very beginning.
Okay.
Just all of it.
Yeah, so 3 minute, elevator pitch about Toby's life. Born to two Nigerian parents who immigrated over here and had me. I was born in Oklahoma and moved to Dallas when I was about 4 or 5.
What part of Oklahoma?
So I was born in Oklahoma City, and then I lived for a little bit in Tulsa,
Okay.
and then my dad's job brought us to Dallas, essentially.
Yeah.
And so kindergarten through second grade I spent in Dallas,
Mhm.
and then second grade through high school graduation I was up in McKinney.
Yeah.
So I've got 4 younger siblings,
Mhm.
and basically, growing up it was the 5 of us plus my parents all throughout school.
Mhm.
When I graduated, I went to Texas Tech, Reckham, out in West Texas.
Love it.
The wild, wild west, man.
Absolutely.
Did my bachelor degree over there, and then did 3 years of additional PT school.
Okay.
And now I'm a physical therapist here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's great. Continue, sorry.
And that's basically it. It might have been even less than 3 minutes.
That was nowhere near 3 minutes. But okay, I mean that's super cool. So PT school, that felt like a big jump. Made it seem like okay, I can just graduate, go straight to PT school.
Mhm.
Like, talk about the training or the hard times of PT school, or if that was hard times, or if it's hard for you. Like, what was that process like?
So physical therapy, the program is competitive.
Mhm.
It's very similar to medical, dental, PA school. Very competitive. You got to go to have a bachelor degree
Mhm.
and complete your prerequisites with different science courses. So biology, chemistry, all of that.
Yeah.
So your grades have to be good enough, first of all, and
Mhm.
then you have to do some additional shadowing, observation, and then apply, obviously, to be able to get in.
Right.
So was lucky enough to get to stay on at Texas Tech, and it was a three years of very rigorous training. The first year is basically all your didactic work, so human anatomy, physiology, biomechanics, all of that.
Okay.
Basically learning that in the classroom.
Mhm.
The second year is taking all of those basic sciences and applying them to patients. So someone with a neuromuscular disorder, or someone with a musculoskeletal disorder, or pediatric patients. Basically taking those basic sciences and applying them to people. And then third year is the combination of those first 2 years. You basically are out in the field, different hospitals, clinics.
This clinical is what they call it?
Clinicals, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Got a little something. And you're working with patients under the supervision of another therapist.
Mhm.
And then by the time you get through all of that, it's been 3 years.
Yeah.
You graduate, but you're still not ready to practice yet.
Okay.
There's still a big board exam that you have to take after you graduate. If you pass that, you're good to go, and you're out practicing. So, you're right. I say it as if it was like a quick, just a quick thing, but it's a daunting undertaking for sure.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
And don't regret it.
Cool, man. Also, so something else that you talked about is how your parents came straight from Nigeria to here. So, like, you guys are first generations
Yep.
in your family.
Uh-huh.
How was that growing up, like, in I guess a straight Americanized place, but your parents are from Nigeria, so like they were probably juggling with that too. So like, what was that like, kind of growing up in two cultures?
Yeah, so I guess if you ask any one of my siblings, they'll give you a different answer.
Yeah.
So obviously Isaac. The
Mhm.
age gap between me, I'm the oldest, and Isaac is 16 years.
Yeah.
So that's 16 years my parents had to kind of figure out how they wanted to blend the two cultures. And so anyway, I'm the first pancake, as I like to say, right? The first pancake you make is always the one that's misshapen, right? It's got a little bit of crust on it. It's not quite right. And so really they weren't super concerned about, instilling a lot of Nigerian culture or making sure I had a lot of that. They were basically, we brought you here so you can have the best life you can. So basically try and learn as much as you can. So all school was basically, getting the culture, and then obviously at home I'd get a little bit of Nigerian upbringing from them. But it was honestly a pretty even blend between the two.
Yeah.
But obviously as my siblings progressed, my parents realized, oh man, we need to pass on more of this culture. So my younger siblings got a lot more of that than I did. But yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I know, like, the couple of times that I've come over and your mom's made what do they call it?
There's fufu.
The one with beef and
meat pies.
Yes.
Those are pretty
absolutely
good.
Scrumptious. Shameless plug for meat pies.
Meat pies.
They are absolutely scrumptious. All right, so now that we kind of know who you are, growing up in a Nigerian household, but also getting that American culture, and now bringing to you are today, PT, physical therapist. Super cool. But with all those successes, we all have our trials and our hard times. So kind of transitioning here, what was your lowest place so far? If it's right now, how are you getting through that?
Yeah.
And if it was then how'd you overcome it?
Man, I can think back to so many, if life is a bunch of, hills and valleys, I can think of so many different valleys in my life. If I have to pick one, probably the lowest place I've ever been. So my parents, the relationship has always been a little bit strained. And so while outwardly they've done very well in terms of, raising us, and we've had nothing but the best childhood, best memories. The relationship with each other was always strained. And so I remember coming home from Thanksgiving break. I was in undergrad at this time, and my mom had moved out, and so that was my first Thanksgiving of having two different Thanksgivings. And I just remember all of my siblings took it different ways, because you got to remember there's 16 years of difference there. And so I kind of took it from man, I've got all these memories of us having Thanksgivings together, so we really need to work to,
this is how it's supposed to be.
This is how it's supposed to be. Whereas my younger siblings were kind of like, well, I mean, this is kind of how it is, so they weren't super keen on, trying to, mend things or anything like that. But anyway, I just remember coming home and just being like, man, this is it's not fun at all. I really wish my parents' relationship was better. I mean, it's one of those, I'm sure we all have those prayers that we've prayed our entire lives. And that's been, for as long as I can remember, one of the prayers that I've always prayed is like, God, if you can, please help my parents' relationship. Like they love us. They would give the world for us, but they've always just had a little bit of a rocky relationship. And then to come home from Thanksgiving break and to see almost a physical manifestation of an internal fear, right? It was like, gosh, I'm praying that never happens, and then coming home and seeing that is almost like, what are we doing? Like what?
Absolutely.
What are we praying for? What are we? What do you do when you do what God tells you to do, but you don't see what He wants you to see, right? And so it was just one of those. My faith kind of had to become authentic. At that point, I had to, I wasn't seeing what I thought I should have seen, and at the same time, I still had to believe that God was who He was, and
even if He didn't, provide, right? Like at quote unquote provide, like what you thought you needed, and that didn't happen. But sorry.
So that was probably the lowest point there, and honestly, there's a period of time that I would say was pretty low in terms of just trying to equalize everyone's emotions, stabilize the water, so to speak, because like I said, I'm the oldest of 5, and so I was almost looked to be the bridge, so to speak, between, are you on mom's side or are you on dad's side? Are you going to dad's house or are you going to mom's house? And so I kind of had to be the bridge between the two. So that was probably my lowest point.
Yeah, just a couple like follow-ups on that. So I guess starting with being the oldest
Mm,
and and having the responsibility, like all or feeling the responsibility, like the emotional support for
yeah.
like all your siblings.
Mm,
And not only that, like, you were probably at that point where you're able to kind of have that dialogue with your parents too. So you were probably taking a meat of that pressure.
yeah.
Um, so how did you kind of cope with that yourself
Mm,
on a day-to-day basis? Like, how did that affect you? Did you feel any like resentment or
mm.
anything towards the situation, like just out of sight, out of mind? Like, how did you get through that?
Yeah, I mean, great question. I think it didn't affect me at the moment.
Hmm.
I realized the effects of what was going on much later.
Okay.
Like I said, Nigerian parents,
Hmm.
oldest sibling.
Yeah.
So with that comes a lot of expectations. Growing up, it was kind of, putting the needs of your siblings above your own. And
Mm.
so growing up and going through that very difficult time, it was, okay, what can I do to help stabilize? What can I do to kind of help keep the boat afloat, so to speak?
Yeah.
And at the time, I was just basically any emotion I would think about feeling, I basically, or, it didn't even register.
Mm.
I think there's someone says that some people, they feel emotions and then they, you know, kind of stuff it underneath. I
Yeah.
was never a stuffer. I was so much going and so much doing that my emotions never registered.
Mm.
And I ended up catching it later in life when I found um,
Wow.
issues and when I found things that I wasn't able to work through. I wasn't
Mm.
able to push through enough.
Mm.
And finally my feelings just burst through the surface. So at the time I thought I did great.
Yeah.
I was like, it really doesn't bother me that much. I mean, it is what it is. I couldn't, if someone had asked me at the time, Toby, tell me how you're feeling, I would have said, I'm feeling great.
Yeah.
I don't like it. As God is my witness, don't have any negative emotions. But it wasn't until later on when I came up against situations that I really wasn't able to work through or do enough to fix that those emotions began to come out. So,
Yeah.
um,
No, no, absolutely. So going into that point now, so when those emotions did like start coming, I
yeah,
bet there was a process just to figure out where these are coming from.
yeah.
Um, and then from there, how did you, I guess, relate it back to that situation? And then how did you get through that to now being like, okay, like this is just what happened in life?
So a lot of help. I
Hmm.
had very grateful for Lubbock and the church that I was in.
Yeah.
We had life group leaders, Sunday school leaders, to where two or three of them, the male leaders, were really my mentors, and
Hmm.
so they had really, you know, were almost kind of a sounding board to me, to where like I'd go home for a break, work on it, work with my family, do the best I can,
Yeah.
come back during the semester and really get to flesh all of that through with them.
Okay.
And so it was really good. I had, people to just kind of walk me through that. They didn't, give me any advice that immediately fixed the situation or anything, but
Hmm.
it did give me encouragement that, man, there are other people who feel like I'm doing what I need to do at the moment. And so I'd say I would attribute a lot of kind of how I walk through that to them. They were
Yeah.
patient with me. So,
Yeah. And I think another important thing, just as you kind of said it, it wasn't like one day you're
oh
just like,
no.
I figured it out
Yeah.
and I feel good now, but it was just through time and time again of kind of just digesting it and feeling it out that you were kind of slowly changing perspectives and feeling better about the situation. All right, so as you guys know, Toby was a part of the initial group of guys who I had make a video about 2020. Right now, we're about to go into that for him, kind of see how he's grown since then, and see the struggles that he was facing then. So here we go.
To draw on, I began to become just more and more stressed and unsatisfied with just kind of how my plan for the year was going, how work was going. Right, I was working full time, and then in March, and then about April, May. Our company had to kind of pull back our hours just to keep themselves afloat. And so I struggled. I really, really struggled from a perspective of not doing as much. Um, I know I went from, kind of everything's okay, everything's okay, to, I gotta find something to do, I gotta find something new, I gotta find something to do. And really, it was quite a struggle for a good amount of the year. A lot of prayer, just asking God to help me to trust in what I could control, and allow Him to trust the rest.
All right. Well, was that weird watching yourself from back then?
It actually wasn't.
Wasn't?
It wasn't that weird.
That's
Yeah.
that's cool. That was like a year ago. I'm not sure why I didn't capture it in that video, but one of the things that didn't capture of you saying that you thrive on doing
Mm,
and not being.
yeah.
Um, and even you talked about how like you tried to pray about God helping you just be.
Mm,
Doing versus being, what? Because that is, I feel like that's a pretty profound thing. Like,
yeah.
what does that mean? Like, you thrive on doing and not being.
I mean, basically, what it means is that my attention span cannot, for whatever reason,
Uh-huh.
stand not doing anything,
Yeah.
which is maybe one of the reasons I'm so attracted to my wife,
Yeah.
in that she is so good at just being, meaning she doesn't have to be doing an activity, she doesn't have to be checking a box,
Mhm.
she doesn't have to be achieving a goal. She can just sit, be, and enjoy. And I think ultimately that's um, the goal God is trying to get all of us to. I
Mhm.
don't know if I said it in the video, but we're called human beings, right? Not human doers.
Yeah.
We need to be okay being in the moment. And for whatever reason, I've just always thrived on doing. I think it has a lot to do with control. I think it has a lot to do with, the Western view of Christianity is, you are what you do. You are in control of your own destiny. I mean,
Mm.
this country was built on that. Like, if you want something, go out, work for it, and get it.
Yeah.
And so I think it takes a little bit of unlearning for me to
Okay.
get into a position of being.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that's I mean, first of all, I think that's just kind of insane how you can see that and
Mm,
like just knowing you're a doer and not necessarily a beer.
mm,
So people would hear you say that like, oh, like you don't like not doing anything. Like
mm.
we work so much. Like that sounds great. But
Yeah.
like in that video, you kind of talked about how like that like caused some stress, like
Mm,
stressing in your life. So
yeah.
you talked about how like you need to be doing something. But why do you think that like stresses you out when there's nothing to do?
I mean, that's a great. I think I love purpose, and I
Mm-hmm.
love most of the things that I do have some sort of purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it wasn't at that time, it wasn't necessarily that I really just wanted to keep myself busy all the time,
Yeah.
but I felt a lack of purpose.
Okay.
I put a lot of my identity, a lot of my worth into what I do.
Yeah.
And when that was taken away, it was, well, who am I if I'm not treating patients?
Mm.
Who am I if I'm not creating a goal sheet?
Okay.
And the answer is a lot. I'm a lot, even
Yeah.
when I'm not doing any of that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how I've attached so much of my identity to that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I don't know if that answered
Yeah, no,
that question, but
that answers it. That kind of brought up another interesting point that I kind of want you to go on is like you attaching your identity to those things.
mm,
Like, do you think there's a reason? There's a reason for that. Not like a like maybe not like a deeper intimate meaning, but just
yeah.
based on what you do, like that you feel that attachment to it.
You know, I don't know. I'm sure there is a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Deep in my idiosyncrasies or deep in my personality, I'm sure there is some reason.
It's like
I
level five SAT,
level
level
five
five SAT word,
vocabulary.
real
Uh,
quick. Okay.
I just think it's a lack of trust in God.
Mm.
I mean, at the end of the day, there can only be one leader,
Mm-hmm.
and am I leading or is God leading?
Okay.
And ultimately, I find myself more often than not liking to be in the leader seat.
And so just going off of that, can you kind of talk about as far as doing a doer versus being. Like, talk about how that, or how God has maybe grown you in that area, or if it has grown, if you're still going through that. Talk about that growth in that area of being.
Yeah, I mean, I think each year of my life, God has shown me something new or shown me something different about the benefits of being a beer, so to speak, versus being a doer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, obviously the pandemic had a lot of growing effects on all of us, but I think that's one of the things the pandemic God really used for me to kind of help, filter through a lot of those thoughts.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I really feel like God is using interruptions to my schedule is probably the biggest thing I would say that he uses, because I love to plan, love to make goals, love to make to-do lists, and if God can interrupt that, I think he can use that as opportunities to bring me back to what he's doing. I hate interruptions.
Yeah.
But there's such good learning opportunities, and I think God loves to use them. So
that's an awesome answer.
yeah.
Well, cool, man. That was video one. The next video that we're about to watch is you kind of talking about marriage, and
okay.
so we're gonna see what he says next, and this is the second video.
We were married June of 2019, so the first part of the year we were still in our first year of marriage, and so again, a lot of opportunity for coming together, but also a lot of opportunity for strife. Being together, brought about some cool opportunities to go on walks, but it also at times made it a little stressful. When you're side by side in the trenches, working together, you've got stress of jobs, stress of schedules. I'm very much, like I said, an extroverted person. I enjoy being with people. My wife also enjoys people, but it does not need as much social time as I do, and so as you can imagine, that brought about some conflict, right? Who do we hang out with? When do we hang out with people? How do we make it safe? And so, learning how to, as an individual, navigate the pandemic, but also as a newly married couple, learning how to navigate and work together, and to hopefully be loving to each other as we do it. So yeah, definitely, a lot of struggles, a lot of challenges. I think I've mentioned, socially, financially, relationally.
All right, so going just from that video, Toby, you're one of the best communicators I know. And I think not only through things that you've been through, but things that you haven't been through. When you talk on it, it feels like it comes from a place of wisdom. It's just so elegantly spoken, and I've always really admired that about you. Nonetheless, like going through a marriage, you've been married 3 years.
Going on 3 in June.
Okay, yeah, going on 3 years. I feel like communication is just going to be issues no matter what. Can you talk about just some of the communications that you guys might have to deal with early on in your marriage, and how you guys had to adopt or overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, that first year is really, to put it in, military terms, it's boot camp. You are, we thought that we communicated well and that we talked a lot before marriage. But man, that first year of marriage, we learned that there were missed expectations in a lot of places that we didn't really expect there to be.
Yeah.
And so, communication really it had a lot to do with when an expectation was missed, which was frequently, and it wasn't all the time, but when it was missed, how do you respond to that?
Yeah.
How do you communicate to the other person that, hey, I was kind of expecting you to do this and you didn't?
Okay.
And so, really the first year was how quickly can we get to the heart of an issue, and how quickly and how safely can both of us carry each other out of that issue. Because the holes and the landmines, the IEDs or whatever, are going to be there regardless of how good of a communicator you're going to be. But for us, it was really how quickly can we get to the heart, and how quickly can both of us carry each other out of it.
Yeah.
And if we didn't do that, man, our arguments would take a lot longer.
Yeah.
But if we could cut through the mess and go straight to the heart of the issue and safely bring both of us out of there, that was always the key.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I feel like, I feel like part of that is just like understanding that you have to kind of pull back layers on yourself.
Yeah.
It's like I'm mad, but I don't even really know what I'm mad at until like I just start realizing like I'm angry, so I can't even hear, see, talk straight. So I think that's super cool how you guys, I just haven't been able to grow and kind of adapt to that situation as you were saying. And so you feel like now, like being in year 3, that like you guys can kind of pinpoint the issues quicker.
I think so. You know, I've heard it said that anger is very much a secondary emotion. You know, it's what we feel when we are hiding what we actually feel. There's a poem actually, Coach Brian Murphy, you know him.
Okay, yeah.
O-line coach.
Poet.
Read us this poem before we, went to a game or whatever, and it's always stuck with me. It's called Man in the Mirror. I don't know if he read that to you guys or whatever. Not the MJ version, but it basically says this: when you get what you want in your struggle for self, and the world makes you king for a day, just look in the mirror and look at yourself and see what that man has to say. For it isn't your father or mother or wife whose judgment upon you must pass. The person whose verdict counts most in your life is the one staring back in the glass. And it was basically this poem about, at the end of the day, you're the only one that can look yourself in the eye and identify what emotions you're feeling. At the end of the day, you're the only one that can be responsible for yourself for what emotions that you're feeling. And oftentimes in marriage, a conflict comes up and it's like, God, it's the other person. Clearly I am in the right, and it's the other person that is messing up. And just time and time again, what God has shown me over and over is look back in the mirror. Look back in the mirror. Look back in the mirror. It's actually, it's not an issue with her. It's an issue with you. And if you would take care of your issue, maybe we can talk about her issue. And
that's good.
So
that's so good,
man, I'm still learning that lesson. I'm still, when anger is that first emotion that comes out, and I have to step back and say, what am I feeling? Why am I getting angry? And if I can't identify that, I can't make a bridge to fix that.
All right, cool. So now going from being a doer and not a beer, talking about marriage struggles. The last video, Toby kind of goes into a biblical story and how it relates to him. So this is what he said about that.
Specifically that I'm a much better doer than I am a beer. I laugh when I think about the story of Mary and Martha, because I am totally a Martha, and the only story I can remember about Martha from the Bible is that, she was rebuked by Jesus for working, and I laugh. I think, placing myself into that situation, I definitely would not have been Mary. I would not have been at the feet of Jesus, soaking up every single word. I would have been, cooking, cleaning, doing different things. And so, in a way, it was good. It was good for me to say, I'm kind of a Martha, and to be comfortable saying that, and to be comfortable, giving myself a little space to laugh at myself in that space. Back.
Bringing it all back, man. So you're alluding to the story of Mary and Martha. Could you just give like a quick 30-second synopsis on what that story is for people who don't know?
Yeah, basically, to not use as much Christian language, it's Jesus coming into a home, and a story of two sisters where one sister is completely enthralled and completely engaged into the person of Jesus, having conversations, being at his feet, enjoying his presence. And a second sister who is busy working, getting things done, prepping the meal. And in the story, that second sister gets upset, and Jesus says, listen, Martha, your sister Mary has chosen what's better, and I'm not going to rebuke her for doing that. And it was almost kind of this story of, Martha, I get that what you're doing is good, but what your sister is doing is better. And so,
thank you for that. Something that I really liked about what you said in the video is like, sometimes when we identify something that maybe a shortcoming that we know, like we kind of suppress that, so which makes it hard to overcome that or grow in that area. But you're just like, I'm a Martha.
Yep.
That's me. Like
hashtag Martha.
that is me. And we already kind of talked about how a doer and how that affected you. So I won't make you answer that question again. And so going from that, when you think about Martha and you think about like how that relates to you, like, and the way it was talking about is a shortcoming as well. But I think something special about that story is, Jesus says like how there will be a time for that, but right now, like, she is here at my feet while I'm here, right? And so there is a time to be a doer. So flipping sides, like, how has being a doer like helped you?
You mean just in general, spiritually?
However you want to take that.
I mean, personally, I love that aspect of me and that aspect of my personality, because I feel like it's helped me in terms of the biblical role of being a husband. Those things have come a little bit easier for me because I'm a doer.
Yeah.
The Bible describes husbands as kind of the initiator of the relationship.
Right.
Much like Jesus initiated his relationship with us, husbands initiate relationships with their wives. And same thing, they're kind of the first ones to apologize in conflict, the first ones to seek resolution. And so in marriage, I think being a doer has really helped me, because as opposed to being passive, which I think we'd both say our nation has a really big problem with in terms of men, husbands, fathers being really, really passive. I feel like that has been a great strength. And so, but there's something freeing. I really wish there's something freeing about reading the Bible and saying, I am not the good character in whatever story it is. There's something freeing about saying, Jesus is rebuking this person. Yeah. And I kind of think that person is right. Like even on the other side of the cross, I kind of think that the other person is right, And so, it's the whole idea of what's best about me. It's a two-sided coin. It can very quickly turn into the worst of me. And so, lots of good insight there.
Yeah. All right. So now we watched all of your videos from 2020.
Throwback.
Which is crazy, thinking about where we were then and how times are now. Good thing COVID's not a thing anymore.
Oh, gosh.
Toby, if you could take the time and speak light into a man's life who's going through depression and anxiety, suicidal thoughts, or maybe panic attacks, what would you say to them?
Really the best thing I could say is you don't have to go through it alone. We weren't made to bear it all. We don't even have the capacity to bear it all. So it's funny that we try and burden it all ourselves. And so I'd really say for someone struggling with depression, anxiety, a lot of these mental health things, find someone you can talk to. A counselor is amazing and a great resource, but sometimes there's a little bit of stigma and there's a little bit of fear about going straight to talk to a professional. So really find a buddy that you trust, a buddy who you've got a relationship with, who you can be open with, and start there. Start the dialogue going and see where the conversation goes.
Absolutely. So, sometimes the most important thing is just taking the step, not realizing we're okay, and telling someone about it. All right, so you guys kind of know how this goes by now. We're going to go into Toby's mental check right now. And so we're going to start with mentally. So Toby, right now on January 21st.
Yeah.
How are you doing mentally? 1 to 10.
Yeah, 1 to 10. I'd probably say Decent 7.8,
Okay.
7.8 to 8. And why? I really feel like I'm learning a lot in my job. I've recently gotten a promotion, and I feel like I'm in a professional space to where I'm getting to utilize a lot of the gifts that God has given me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that gives me a lot of mental security and well-being.
Mm.
Obviously, we've talked about me being a doer, and so wanting to make sure I don't attach too much of my worth to that. But in terms of coming home at night, the things that are on my brain when I go to sleep, there's not a lot of clutter, I would say. And so yeah, I'd say 7.8 to 8.
So mentally at a
Mm.
7.5 to 8, that's a 7.8?
That's 7.8 to 8.
Yeah,
Very
some
precise
yeah,
numbers
I
here.
love it. Okay. Well, that's super good to hear. Now
Mm.
shifting to emotionally. How you
Mm.
doing?
Yeah, I would say kind of really good on that front as well.
Hmm.
Probably a solid 8
Awesome.
emotionally. Just being able to, like I said, the pandemic really helped bring a lot of my hidden thoughts to the forefront.
Yeah.
And so I'm able to watch for a lot of those. And if I do kind of sense an emotion creeping up, able to kind of recognize it and stop it early on.
Hmm.
But as I said before, sometimes I don't know what I don't know until I come up to a situation.
Yeah.
And so there very well could be a situation that might happen 10 minutes from now and I might explode. Who knows?
Yeah.
But in terms of how I feel with my emotions and how I feel like I'm currently processing all of that and self awareness, I feel like I'm doing pretty good at the moment.
All right, so we got mentally 7.5 to 8, emotionally at an 8. How about spiritually?
Yeah, I'd probably say 8 spiritually as well. I think me and you have had separate conversations about some of the different things that I'm doing.
Yeah.
I just started journaling, which has
Hmm.
been might tie a little bit more into emotional and mental, but the effect it's had on me spiritually has been really good. I've never journaled before in my life. Probably why I struggle so much with identifying my own emotions, and so being able to journal now has been really, really helpful
Yeah.
because one of the things I do is every day I sum up the day into 3 words or less. It's a
Okay.
really fun game, and so by doing that, I feel like if I say, "Hey, Brian, in 3 words, describe your day,"
Hmm.
you kind of take a big, almost a 10,000 foot look at your day, and
Hmm.
then you filter it down into 3 words.
Yeah.
And I feel like that activity for me has been so good spiritually because oftentimes I'll come home from work and Claire will say, "How was your day?" And I'll say, "It was good." Like I almost, compartmentalize work was work, home is home, whatever. And so that activity really allows God to almost fill all those spaces that I didn't
Mm.
let him to be in,
Yeah.
fill up that 10,000 foot view, and
Mm.
then kind of fill up all the other areas until I get to
Yeah. The
that word.
meat.
And
Yeah.
so it almost like it brings God back into my day,
Hmm.
into areas where I didn't really think to have him.
Yeah.
So it's been really good.
No, that's awesome. I just on that I heard like there was a study done. I don't know the source. I
Mm.
don't know the organization where the study came from. I just want to say that. But I read something that said like people who reflect at the end of each other days
Mm.
are generally happier than
Mm.
people who don't. So I
Yeah.
think that's really cool that you do that. Big eight guy over here.
Oh
All right,
gosh.
big eight guy.
We're about to bring down that average. Don't worry.
All right, last but not least, man. How are you doing physically?
So I guess there are a lot of different compartments of
Yeah,
physical,
yep.
but I'll give me a solid 6.
Okay, sick.
Being generous. Yeah. So I mean, one of the things I love to do and is part of my rhythm is working out.
Hmm.
I mean, if I told you the last time I worked out, I don't even remember when the last time has been. So it's been a while.
Yeah,
Been good in terms of nutrition and stuff like that.
it's
I mean,
good to
not the
hear.
best, but definitely that's a big component. My workouts have not been super consistent with that.
Yeah,
So, but I'm sleeping better at night. So
yeah, it's
I,
just a trade-off. It's the
you
holiday
know,
season too, man. Like spring
Christmas
break.
was a month
Spring break's not here yet. I'm
ago.
trying to give you something.
So a 6 probably is generous, but
Okay,
I'd give myself a 6.
awesome, man. Well, that's so good to hear, man. That you are where you are right now, just in all those different aspects. I really appreciate like you being on here today and everything. And like this last piece is really just my appreciation for you. One of the things that I think like will always resonate with me is like you took my thought of God in the box that I put him in, and you like really unleashed his unconditional love. And I'll tell the story that made me think of it. So you remember it was my sophomore year or in your junior year, and I came through Texas Tech, and I just kind of I was in a place, and I let everything out to you. And you know, over the next couple of years, as things got better, and like I remember talking to you one time, and I was talking about being in that space and being in the space I'm in now, and just feeling so close with God and feeling so close knit. And you told me, you said, Brian, God doesn't love you any more now than he did then.
Come on.
And in that moment, that made me realize like it had nothing to do with what I was doing. That God and I are super good now. God has always been good, and he's always been loving regardless of where I am at. And that completely opened up my box. And so I just want to thank you just for not only just the brother you've been in my life since high school, but just the wisdom, the love that you've always had for me, and just the person you are. You're the most steady person I know. You've very much been who you were like before any of us had it figured out, and I've always admired that about you, and I appreciate it. Appreciate you being on the show.
That goes both ways, my friend. I feel all those same things towards you. So
I appreciate it. Well, that's the last episode. Thank you, Toby, for being on here.
Do we kiss? Is that the way we?